Here's a couple of testimonies. Lynn from Australia writes, "Dear sisters, I happened upon your perpetual adoration site through another like-minded link. It is so wonderful to have access to the divine presence on the internet." Here's a statement by Cindy from Alabama. "I know that all this sounds crazy, but I guess I should start from the beginning. Tonight was the first time I prayed my rosary in front of Jesus online. Right after I finished saying the rosary, I saw a distinct face. I can still see his eyes. Crowns of thorn, nose and beard. I cannot explain it, but I guess he must be very pleased with your work. I'm not crazy. I do go adore Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament in person where I live, but just wanted to pray in front of him at home tonight on your site rather than not adoring him at all. When I came to write you, I still saw his face. I will be telling people around, other people, but what a blessing your site is to all around the world." Well, here's the Envoy, Catholics Apologetics magazine. On the front cover of this particular issue, "This looks like bread, tastes like bread, feels like bread. Is this?" Well, you could read it. "Oh, in God is a wafer." And another Envoy issue, and a special article on Eucharistic Adoration, Volume 7, 2003, on Eucharistic Adoration. And here's the Pope with a statement on the art of Eucharistic prayer by Pope John Paul II. It says, "The worship of the Eucharist outside of the Mass is of an inestimable value for the life of the Church. This worship is strictly linked to the celebration of the Eucharistic sacrifice." And he says a lot of other things. And on the same page, this picture, which is a face of Jesus on a wafer. Eucharistic miracles are happening as well. And of course, this is not new. If I had the time to go into this, it can be documented that Eucharistic miracles occurred throughout the centuries. In fact, one of the reasons for the Reformation. J.C. Ryle, in a statement made about why people were burned at the stake or tortured, says that many of them, of course, was because they stood up to not accepting the Catholic teaching on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Many of these so-called miracles occurred, they said, in the past, which many people perceived as demonic. Here's some present-day occurrences. Here's a letter sent by Bishop Claudio Gatti on the 15th of June, 2000, to cardinals, bishops, and priests. And I quote, "On the 11th of June 2000, the Feast of Pentecost, while I was celebrating Holy Mass in the Church of the Mother of the Eucharist, a great Eucharistic miracle happened. As soon as I finished saying the wording of the consecration of bread, blood began to come out from my host. Time stopped for me. I was bending over the host that I was holding tightly in my hands and was gazing at the divine blood that was spreading on a great part of the surface." And here you see this photograph of Bishop Gatti. And behind him, you see the Mother of the Eucharist holding a wafer. There you see a larger image of this wafer that supposedly is turning to blood. The Eucharistic miracle. Or here's another testimony of parish priest Father Johnson Karur in India. On the 28th of April 2001, we held the novena prayer to St. Jude in the parish church at Chiratakornam, as usual. At 8:49 a.m., I exposed the Holy Eucharist and the monstrance, and we started the adoration. During the adoration, I saw 3 dots on the Holy Eucharist. I stopped reciting the prayers, and as if from some sort of inner inspiration, I just stood looking at the Eucharist. As the novena prayer was over, I gave the faithful Eucharistic benediction. Then I invited the attention of the faithful to the monstrance, and they testified they saw 3 dots on the Eucharist. I asked the faithful to remain in prayer, and I kept the Holy Eucharist in the tabernacle. I celebrated the Holy Mass on Monday, the 30th of April, and on the next day I left for Trivandrum. After returning from Trivandrum on Saturday morning, the 5th May 2001, I opened the church for liturgical service. I vested myself and opened the tabernacle. Immediately I noticed the figure of a human face in yellow color in the Eucharist. I was at loss what to do. I just stood there for a few seconds. And then they show this picture, again of a face on the wafer, in the monstrance. Michael Brown was a website called www.spiritdaily. Keeps us informed regarding these kinds of things that are occurring. He's written several books and articles. One is entitled Secrets of the Eucharist. The Last Secret. Third book, The Final Hour. On July 1st, 2003, Michael Brown wrote this article entitled Predictions Provoke Key Questions. Do we face a second coming or a manifestation? And this is what he states in his article. If Christ were to come, what would it be like? In particular, what might be meant by a manifestation? We're prompted to pose those questions due to the flurry of prophecies during the last 20 years and recent predictions that Jesus will soon manifest or even formally return. In our minds, the key question, which is the likeliest, a manifestation or his actual second coming? And Michael Brown makes his statement. But it still begs the question, if a manifestation is ready to occur, how might it happen? In what way? How will Jesus knock on our doors? Will we dream dreams, as Muslims are doing now? Will there be a multiplication of his alleged apparitions? Will there be an enhanced power as well as miracles associated with the Blessed Sacrament? He goes on to say that there are many who actually believe Jesus will literally return. He says that isn't the Catholic view of the second coming. The Catholic view of the second coming is that the kingdom of God will be established here on earth through Catholics who've become Catholics by experiencing the Eucharist. Because that's foundational to the faith. And so my question is it possible that this Eucharistic Christ is another Jesus? Here's a book called Mother of the Secret, Thomas Patrisco. Last paragraph on the back cover of the book states, the Mother of the Secret, Thomas Patrisco, traces for us the exciting history of this important part of our faith. He reveals how what was once the church's greatest secret is about to become the cornerstone of a glorious new era. An era in which Jesus Christ will soon come to reign throughout the world in the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. Last night I showed you the book, The Thunder of Justice. We looked at this illustration, the two pillars, as Don Bosco saw in his vision. The pillar of the Eucharistic Jesus and the mother of the Eucharist, with the Pope in between. And current events seem to be headed in that direction. And last night I showed you these two images. John Paul II, the Dalai Lama, in the same place, in front of the same image. The Queen of Heaven, the Mother of the Eucharist. And incidentally, there is a connection between the Mother of the Eucharist and the Eucharistic Jesus. I could show you image after image after image showing supposedly Mary and the Eucharist. You see, there's a connection.